quote, "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," end quote. And it's because I agree with these words, I strongly affirm today's resolution and stand resolved that in the pursuit of justice, due process must be valued above the discovery of fact. Now, I'd like to start off this first affirmative rebuttal by clearing up just two things about the resolution. The first of which is what the resolution is actually asking us and what conflict means within the resolution. Now, throughout my opponent's case, he provided several different examples of where the discovery of fact and due process worked together. Now, in his last cross-examination, my opponent asked me what the resolution asks us about, where the conflict is, and I stated I think the resolution is really asking us whether or not the discovery of fact should take place through due process and be limited to simply what due process allows, or whether the discovery of fact should be allowed to take place above and beyond due process. The fact is, if we're saying the facts can only be found through due process, that's saying that due process must be valued above the discovery of fact. Furthermore, if we state that valuing the discovery of fact above and beyond due process and carrying it beyond what due process would allow, if we say that doing that is unjust, that is negating the resolution. Now, today my opponent provided several different examples of where discovery of fact took place through due process, and he continually stated that if rights and human dignity are violated, then that definitely is not in the pursuit of justice, and today I agree. The fact is, my opponent and I are in agreement. The discovery of fact should only take place through due process, in a way that protects human dignity, in a way that protects rights, and in a way that pursues justice. That is in complete agreement with the affirmative stance on today's resolution. But the second thing I think we really need to clear up is about what exactly the pursuit of justice is. Now, when we're talking about the pursuit of justice, we mean any person who honestly wants to achieve justice and does whatever he can to make sure that justice is achieved. My opponent in his last speech continued to say that violations of rights and violations of human dignity are violations of justice, and thus anyone who violates rights must not be in the pursuit of justice. However, one important thing to notice is that people sometimes fail to look at the big picture. Additionally, in many cases, people are pursuing justice and fail to achieve it. Saying, oh, they violated rights, therefore they weren't in the pursuit of justice, is simply a misunderstanding about how the human mind works. If we pursue justice, we can sometimes fail to look at the big picture, and we can sometimes fail to protect rights. And that's why following due process is so important. It's the only system which makes sure that rights are protected and human dignity is upheld and justice is pursued inside and outside the courtroom. With that clarified, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the main points I brought up in my first speech. I showed how human dignity is essential, and my opponent agreed that human dignity is an essential part of justice. Furthermore, we've seen that when the discovery of fact takes place outside of due process, it can violate human dignity and it can violate justice. I think that's why my opponent and I both agree that discovery of fact should only take place through due process. In my second contention, I brought up the example of Savannah Redding, which my opponent responded to by saying teachers were searching and not the government. However, they continually decided to violate due process in favor of the discovery of fact, so regardless of who the actor was, it still falls within the context of today's resolution. Furthermore, I provided two examples, that of the exclusionary rule and that of victims' rights, which my opponent did not address and thus continue to support the affirmative position. My opponent finally responded to one more example where he talked about a drunk driver in a case where a judge withheld evidence from a court with no reason whatsoever. I just have two quick responses. The first of which is that there are due process standards for what judges should and should not exclude from the trial. And if the judge was in violation of these standards, he was in violation of due process, and thus his side is not the fault of the affirmative stance in today's resolution. But the second of which is that if a judge decided to exclude evidence from a trial for no reason whatsoever, he clearly was not in the pursuit of justice, and that also doesn't fall within the affirmative scope of today's resolution. So for all these reasons, I'd strongly urge an affirmative ballot at the end of today's